Howdy folks, it's Angel the Hunting Gear Guy. This is the Norinco NP34. It's a clone of the SIG P228. And this is a Norinco NP22. It's a clone of the SIG P226. This one's got a couple mods on it, the other one's factory. These are a couple of pistols that Norinco makes. They're pretty good clones of the SIG series of pistols. They're older stuff. Pretty interesting for mainly one reason here in Canada, which is that they're right around $300. So price is fantastic. They compete with a couple of other pistols in this same kind of price range, and they bring some interesting things to the table in terms of what you can do with them. So before we go too far, my magazine's empty, and of course, yeah, I do this beforehand, but I still got to show you guys. Okay, chamber's empty as well. There's also something you should do if you're going to start messing with firearms. As always, safety check them to make sure that they're empty. So my chamber is empty on that one. Why don't we take a closer look at these pistols? All right, let's start with the shorter one, which is this NP34. It's got a shorter slide and it's got a shorter grip as well. And because we're in Canada here, it's got a barrel that goes a little bit past the slide because stupid Canada things, but whatever. Starting from the back, it is hammer fired. The hammer is kind of interesting on these. So, you know, obviously, yeah, you pull the trigger, hammer goes forward, hits the firing pin, and it rebounds a little bit to this neutral spot right here. You let go of the trigger, that hammer is now blocked, and it can't go hit that firing pin even if you drop it. So it is drop safe when the hammer is like this, when it's decocked. To pull the hammer back, yeah, you can pull it back just like that and use it in single action, or you can pull it back and fire it in double action, and then it'll cycle, and then you're off to the single action. Reset with the factory trigger is a little bit not bad. It just, you know, you go a little bit out there to reset, but it is quite a bit shorter if you can get the short reset kit, which one this one has. So trigger goes off there. Watch the reset on this one. Boop! Practically nothing there. So very nice reset on that guy. Back to the NP34. Now we've got a couple of different controls, all very, very close in here, all readily available with our thumb. We have our slide lock, so we can pull that, push it up, and it kind of locks into that little slot in there. And then pressing that down releases the slide. We've got our decocker, and what this does is safely pulls down the hammer. So you pull this down, that hammer can't hit that firing pin. Even though if it looks fast, it's still safe. It's still not going to hit that firing pin. So it's a very quick way to get into a safe position. Again, we're drop safe, and all we need to do when we're pulling it back into action, pulling it from our holster, is just press the trigger to get that double action into play. And then we've got our magazine release here, and it's, I don't know, it works, it's fine. It drops free and whatnot, and it's fine. If there is one complaint about these controls is that they're a little bit crowded, I guess, in here. And if you grip the pistol like this, you see what's happening with that slide release. So like a thumbs forward style, you'll need to move your right thumb over a little bit so it's not interfering with that slide release, because otherwise my magazine is in. It should lock the slide back, but it won't because my thumb is lightly applying pressure right here. So you need to move that thumb over so that the slide lock can do its job. A little bit further forward than that, we've got a takedown lever. I'm going to link the full takedown of this pistol either here or there or somewhere, so you can watch that if you're so interested. We've got a basic 3-dot sight setup here. If you're interested and you're going to use this for gaming like IPSC or 3-gun or something like that, I would recommend blacking out the rear dots, because otherwise, like what you ideally want is a very quick, like there's the dot, it's kind of roughly in the notch, and be able to fire very quickly. And 3 dots are just a little bit confusing when you're doing that. So I prefer, actually what I really like is having a fiber optic front sight. But because these use not quite the SIG dovetail, you might have problems getting the SIG sights in here. So those aren't easily replaceable. And along the front here, we've got a rail underneath. So if you wanted to mount a light or laser or something like that, that's easy to do as well. When we're looking at this NP22, it's very similar. This one has the E2 grips on it. So these are SIG grips that you can put on some of these pistols. It changes the back of it. If you look at that, it's kind of like got a rounded, almost looks like a shadow hump to the back there, whereas this one's kind of like a little bit more straight. I do like this grip quite a bit more. It feels a lot better in your hand. The other thing that's really nice about this pistol is that the grip length is quite a bit better. So with the magazine in, I'm not going to pinch my fingers. I've got my full 3 fingers on there, whereas with this guy, my pinky is just kind of like hanging off. And if I ram this magazine in while that pinky's there, I'm going to pinch the shit out of my fingers. So when you're shooting the NP34 and you got big hands, pinky's out. Now, aside from the slide and the grip, there's not really a lot of external differences on this NP22 compared with the NP34. There are a couple of minor differences on the inside of it. So some of the springs and that kind of thing, you'll have to use the appropriate, whether it be a SIG P226 or 228 version. Now, this pistol also has a couple of other SIG parts in addition to the short reset trigger. So I'm not able to determine whether the NP22 has this nice of a decocker from factory, but this one, you press a decocker down and it nicely lets the hammer down. That's not really required, like the other one lets them down quick, but it does feel a little bit nicer to do that. But again, doesn't make a difference. All right, now that we've had a detailed look at these guns, let's take them out to the range. Oh, we're back. Oh, two guns. Firing two handguns never gets old. Well, it gets old after after you're shooting all that 9mm ammo and you're like, oh, this is my kid's college fund. I'm blowing out with with all the 9mm ammo I'm shooting. Couple things to note, I guess, about these guns. I just want to talk a little bit about this one. So you saw in the video there's a couple of times where I was holding on to the slide release and the slide went forward even though there was no ammo in there. So still something I'm getting used to. Loading the magazines, oh, so nice, so nice. These things, they don't have like a ton of spring pressure on there. The feed lips are nice and small. So loading up these magazines is super duper easy. One thing that I found with the NP34 mags, the dimple that they have in there that's holding on the floor plate is not very strong. In fact, if you just push on it, it'll just come off, which leads to an interesting thing that can happen. If you pop this magazine in and you hit it a little bit too hard forward, you'll knock the floor plate right off of it. Magic. Fairly easily. I was doing that on purpose there, but one could imagine if you were in a match or something like that and the magazine didn't quite go in and you're trying to ram it home, super easy it could happen. And there's a couple of quick fixes. One, you could fix the little dimple there. You could dimple it more, make it more dimply by using a punch and a hammer and just, beat the hell out of it a little bit. Or your other option, which is probably the better option, is just to get some Mekgar mags. Mekgar makes mags for, they make mags for most pistols these days, and their mags are universally pretty good. They got a nice glossy finish on there, and they're good mags. And check out that big honking piece of plastic there. You're not going to knock that off by hitting it forward as you put it on the gun, even if you hit it quite hard. So I would just go that route. I would get some Mekgar mags. So the Mekgar mags do work and they do feed, at least in this NP22, they ran fine. So there's a Mekgar mag. There's the one with the little step down plastic doohickey to limit it to 10. Either one works. This 10 rounder here, it's a little bit tight. So I could see this might be where some people have some issues because it is like right there and it's very flush. Whereas some of these other ones have a little bit more play, and generally like a little bit of play would be probably a good thing, because if you don't have enough play in there, it might not quite latch onto the magazine release there. But yeah, these mags are a lot nicer. It works. That's the way I would go if I wanted to get a bunch of mags for IPSC or something like that. I'd probably still keep the Norp mags. Just keep them further back on the belt, so use the good ones first before you get too far into the match. Now, the NP34, with its shorter grip, will also take the P226 mags. They just stick out a little bit. So you can see there, they just kind of stick out from the bottom. If you're shooting it in a match, you probably don't care. You're not going to pinch your fingers now because there's not enough to pinch in there. But the reverse is not true. You can't take the NP22 and put a NP34 mag in. It looks like it's in there, but it's not. It's not actually latching or high enough in there to feed ammo into here. So works one way, not the other. So who do I recommend the NP34 or the NP22 to? first-time pistol buyers who want to upgrade their pistol as they go. So the reason why I say that is this is right around $300. So it's competing with the Terra TM9. It's competing with the Girsan MC28. A little bit, I guess, the TT33, but not really the TT33 because that's a little bit more of a specialty collector kind of a pistol. I don't know. Anyways, with the Girsan MC28 and with the Terra TM9, not a lot of upgradability that you can do on them. You can't really find like grips or extra stuff to swap into them. With a SIG P228 or a P226 clone, lots of parts you can find. Lots and lots of parts you could find if you want to upgrade it. Holsters, magazine pouches, magazines. This is all stuff that you're going to find at every gun store because P226s are popular. It's a popular style of gun, and there's a lot of stuff out there. So if you want to upgrade your pistol as you go, there's a lot of value in these things. Now, which one would I get between the NP22 and the NP34? The NP22 by far, but that's because I have big hands, and this allows me to get more grip on the gun. The little bit longer slide means a little bit longer sight radius, as you can see there from the NP22. So that's a little bit better. And the fact that it takes the P226 mags is just going to make those a little bit easier to find and a little bit easier to get for the gun. Grips, all that kind of stuff, they're just going to be a little bit easier to find because the 226 is a lot more popular than the 228 or similar handguns. Now, who wouldn't I recommend pick one of these up? If you have weak grip strength, this is not the right pistol because this is a 12-pound trigger pull on double action. Oof, that's a lot. Now, you only have to do it once, make that first shot, and then you're off to single action world. And single action on this thing is pretty nice. It's 4.5, 5 pounds. It's a pretty light trigger. It's nice and crisp. There's not really any, like, there's a little bit of take up there, and then it's a nice sharp break. So the single action trigger is fine. It's a fine single action trigger on here. But again, you need to have that grip strength to press through a 12-pound trigger press to start with. You can get different mainsprings and whatnot to work to help to make that trigger press a little bit lighter. You could also add in a couple of the other SIG parts in there, but you're never going to get it like really, really low. And the other thing that I guess you could recommend or not recommend, if you have large hands, there's a lot of crowded controls in here. I was complaining about the slide lock and hitting that, and I found it very difficult to not hit the slide lock with that thumb just because of how much time I've got on other styles of pistols that don't have such an easy to hit slide lock. Some people have reported hitting the magazine release with the knuckle on their thumb accidentally, so accidentally dropping their magazines halfway through matches. So suffice to say, it's got a pretty compact, crowded little area over here. If you have small hands or if you have short fingers, really nice because all the controls are right here available for you. So should you get an NP34 or an NP22? Well, I think that depends on a couple of different things. One is whether you just want the gun to work out of the box or whether you want to like tinker with it and add to it and change things around on it. Changing things around on an NP22 or an NP34 is pretty easy because there's lots of parts out there for them. There's lots of SIG grips and holsters and mag pouches and all that other good stuff. So that stuff is all very easy. Whereas on some other $300 pistols like the Terra TM9 or the Girsan MC28, there's not really a lot out there. They work. Well, the Girsan works out of the box very well. So if you want like a $300 pistol that works out of the box, that has a couple of like, holsters and mags and whatever, the Girsan is out there. And that one has the added benefit of being able to take CZ75 mags with a small mod to the mag catch. So that is very, very nice. But if you want to add parts, or if you just always wanted a SIG but couldn't justify the $1,000 they want for a P226, this one's a lot more attractive at right around $300, and you can put some of the parts on there that you might want. So that makes it kind of interesting. If you have smaller thumbs or fingers and you want to access the controls, these guns are very nice. You do need the grip strength to be able to pull through that double action. And they are kind of big and chunky. Like these are These would have been like state of the art in the mid 80s to mid 90s, but in like the 2020s, these are starting to show their age compared to other more contemporary, again, your striker fired polymer frame pistols out there. But for what they are back then, for what they are right now, which is a $300 pistol that gets you into a bunch of potential upgrades, they're pretty neat in that aspect, and you might want to check them out. Thanks for watching.